What is an unconditional life? A perfect life? No. A life without pain? Not even close. An unconditional life is when you choose to be your most authentic self. Knowing and aligning with who you truly are. Grabbing a hold of your life and loving it unconditionally. We'll explore how others are living life without conditions. How they've turned their mess into their message. Their pain into their purpose. Their suffering into service. Our guests will be thought leaders, game changers, and divine nobodies. They will share their stories, insights, strategies, and successes. So you can create the life of spirit, service, and success. Welcome to an unconditional life.
Hello and welcome. I'm Joe Atalig. I'm excited for you to be here. And actually, that short little video introduction is the last time you'll see it because I'm renaming and rebranding this show. And so you know it as an unconditional life, and it is now going to be probably my first love, which is going to be called Love Wave Live. And it gives me an opportunity to really continue this platform around solidifying that love is still the answer in any area of our lives. Whatever the questions that life brings, that love is the answer. And an unconditional life, I see it more as under the umbrella of Love Wave Live. So as I transition, my first guest today really brings that absolutely to life. And she is a friend who I've met now and have been able to, on a weekly basis, glean from her, learn from her wisdom, from her insights, from her teaching, and actually through really robust conversation. So it was a no-brainer for me to bring her on and share something that she has actually experienced and actually put out into the world. It has brought, I wouldn't say controversy, but definitely has piqued people's interest as well as, activated some inner thoughts that is really healthy, I think, for a time like this to have conversation. And that's what she is all about. And it is having robust and healthy conversation. My guest today is JoDi Evans. And I'll tell you a little bit about JoDi. In 2017, after raising 4 children, she walked away from a very thriving corporate career at Walt Disney World to find a life of freedom and conscious living. Her dream of full-time RV life was manifesting right before her very eyes. Now, JoDi has traveled around the country, but now she is settled in North Carolina in the Smoky Mountains. And I smile when I say that because I just can picture, right, the Smoky Mountains. And she was able to describe, where she resides and just the beauty of it. And it's a place that I would absolutely love to visit. But when she is not writing or making art, JoDi loves to teach others how she has found emotional health through conscious living. So without further ado, I would like to bring on my guest, JoDi Evans. There she is.
I'm so honored to be
Good
here.
morning. Oh my gosh, so great to have you. And so what's it like in North Carolina right now?
It's actually kind of cool this morning. I noticed last night it was getting a little chilly, which is weird because it's only early August.
Right. Yeah.
We're at 2,600 feet, so it's a different experience up here.
Yeah.
After living in Florida for 19 years at sea level, it's a little different to be at 2,600 feet.
What a big, wow, polar opposites, right?
Yeah. It's very
That's amazing. So I'm really curious, and for the viewers who are watching and get to know you a little bit more, as I shared what happened in 2017, what prompted this decision to walk away from the life that you knew to the life that you wanted to create?
So I had been through more than one divorce, and I was a single mom. And it occurred to me as they started going into high school and then college, that I needed a plan because eventually they were going to all be out of the house and I would have to do something with my life, right? And I spent some time thinking about that and realized that one thing I had always loved was RVs. I had an aunt when I was a small child. I had an aunt who bought a Winnebago bus and eventually ended up retiring and going and traveling the country. And I thought that was the neatest thing. And every time we would visit them at her home before they retired and went off to the world, every time we would go there for Christmas or Easter, I would be like, Aunt Dorothy, can I go into Winnebago? Yes. And I would go in there and it was this little like dollhouse on wheels, but my size, right? Like I could sit at this little dinette and there's this little kitchen and there's a bedroom and I
Mm,
thought it was the neatest thing in the world. And so I decided, well, what if I did that? What if me and my dog just went and we got an RV and we just went off and traveled the world? And by the time I reached that point, when my kids were getting older and it was getting to be like the last one was going to be out of the house, but then I had my partner and I told him, when I met him, I said, well, things started getting serious. I said, you just need to understand, this is my plan once the kids are gone. And he was like, oh, okay, that sounds cool. We can do that. I was like, cool, because I'm doing it with you or without you.
yeah, right.
And so then as it got time for the last one to be leaving the house, and there were some bounce backs a few times. I have
Sure.
4 kids, so there was an 8-year gap from the first to the last. And so as the younger ones were coming up, there were some bounce backs with the older ones. And but it finally started in 2017 in like March. It seemed like, wow, this could actually happen this year. And I started to let myself imagine what would that look like. And
Mm,
then when it came time to actually leave my job, like so many people were like, well, how could you walk away? You finally, I had just been promoted again, and I was at a really, like, it was really moving along and I could have kept going further with my career at that point. And I was like, but that wasn't my dream. Other
yeah,
people's dream was to work at Walt Disney World. I was there because I lived in Florida and I fed my kids. It was never
yeah,
my dream to have that career. My
right.
dream was to go be free. So,
Wow. That takes a lot of courage, bravery, intention to walk away from a life that you're living total opposite of what you were experiencing.
yeah.
But what came up for me in you sharing right now was that you're honoring what you felt as a little girl, right? It was
Yes.
just like,
Yes.
oh, this is right. And being able to live that out in your adult life.
Hmm.
Talk about happiness. That's happiness, right?
Yeah, except the
Wow.
parts that nobody warns you about.
That's the road to it, right? Yeah. What
The
would you
oh my
say?
God, I did it. Now what?
Yeah,
It's a real
exactly.
thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, what were the things that you learned the most about yourself when you decided I'm leaping, right? I'm going to not run, I'm going to leap into this life with a lot of the not knowing. Would you say the two biggest things that you discovered or relearned or stood out about who you are in the midst of this?
My favorite thing that I've learned over the last 3 years, but particularly with following through and taking that step and leaping, is that I can trust myself.
Mm,
I can trust myself. That has been huge.
mm,
And it gets more
that's huge.
solid as time goes by. Even
That,
when you make mistakes and you find yourself places you didn't expect to find yourself, and you think, oh, wow, how did I get here? Oh, I did that. So wait, I can get myself out of that. If I brought myself here, I can get myself out.
mm,
Personal
that's beautiful.
responsibility is probably one of the biggest things that aids me in constantly moving forward. If I take absolute responsibility for everything in my experience, then I have absolute control over everything in my experience.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's huge. The trusting yourself is really the definition of confidence, right? You're confident in who you are, what you bring to the world, what you want to become, what you want to contribute when you trust yourself. So, and look what's happened 3 years later, almost three. It's just amazing. Well, what I wanted, and one of the main reasons, of course, that I brought you on today was to discuss your passion project that you recently released into the world. I went and took a look at your website, and your blog is absolutely amazing. I was getting lost in your writing, and I've heard you, of course, speak, but I've never seen it in written form. And I'm like, oh, shoot, I there are some new things I discovered. I was like, whoa. I mean, there's some you've always been bold to me, but it comes out really vividly within your writing. So I wanted to share an excerpt that you wrote on July the 23rd. And the article was called "You Have to Get in the Water." And here's what you wrote. You said, "I just read a statement that moved me on many levels. Quote unquote, if you want to turn the tide, you have to get in the water." Wow, that really says it all, doesn't it? I've been fairly silent over the last few months regarding everything that is happening in the world this year. Not because of fear of what people will think of my choices and opinions, but because I just don't have the energy to deal with other people's BS. I'm too busy having a life, as we all should be, except that there are times in your life when you have to step up and speak out so that you can indeed continue on your path. And that is the crossroads I find myself at these days. Hence, it is time to get in the water. If I hope to see a world exist that I would even want to live in. So very poignant, very real, and just vulnerable, putting it out there, right? So I think that's a great jumping off point to our conversation about your passion project and called the Mirror Project, See Yourself. Yeah. So share with us now what was happening, as this was all starting to, really start to unfold inside of you.
Well, I think, we all know it, everything going on in the world today with the pandemic and whatever they're calling it this week. It started in the middle of March. It got really, I just don't take it seriously. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I take the fact that there's an illness seriously. I acknowledge there's an illness in the world that is deeply affecting some lives. I do want to make that clear in the beginning. I'm not saying I don't take that seriously.
Right.
What I do not take seriously is the circus that has arisen around it. Mm-hmm. And people get confused because I don't take the circus seriously. They think I don't take the illness seriously. And they're two totally different things in my mind. So in March, the circus started. The illness was becoming much more, oh, wow, it's America's got to pay attention, right? And that's, definitely. And but then the circus started happening in March, and it started building and building. And I sat back and watched. And by the end of April, it was obvious to me that it really was going to be a circus. This legitimate illness that legitimately affects human beings was going to be used in our culture, in our country, on social media, on the news, in celebrity culture, everywhere. A circus was going to be created and used to affect every other aspect of our lives. That became obvious to me in April. And I sat back and watched because all these voices were popping up from, everyone I knew personally, everyone out in the world, everyone on any social media platform, out in media. All these voices were popping up everywhere. And everybody had an idea and everybody had an opinion and everybody was speaking outward. And nobody was looking, oh, what do you think? Oh, what do you think? Well, what should we do about this? Well, how can we solve this? Nobody was sitting down at a table and saying, let's have a conversation. Everyone was just holding up their sign, putting up their fist. This is what I think, and speaking outward. And so I got this idea to create an image of that. And so it started.
Yeah.
April 29th, I sat at my cross stitch program and I sat there for about 5 hours. And then boom, I had this picture that I decided I was going to stitch and process my feelings while I was stitching this picture of people speaking outward with little fists and little signs. And they were standing right next to each other, not seeing anyone standing next to them.
Wow. That's the first part. Did you know it was going to be a 4-part series per se in the very beginning?
Not when I started. When I started, it was one picture.
Yeah. And I like to bring that up. And so you can maybe give us some insight. And what I appreciate is that what you're saying as you delved into your work and your art to express, to process, etc., what started to, really come forth for you.
Mhm.
So let me bring that up and you can walk us through
Okay.
it.
So there, I was trying to show as whole and complete as I could, a representation of all the different voices I was hearing and seeing. And so there's a mother, the very first one with the turquoise shirt is a mom, just saying, I think, what is that one? Stay home, a
Yes,
mom
stay home.
staying home with their kids. And then the next one is food rationing is next. There were people starting to say, oh my gosh, going straight to the extreme. And he's kind of dressed like a little prepper. And then the next one is jobless. It's a career woman,
Yeah.
saying, hello, I'm jobless. Is anyone paying attention? We don't have jobs. We don't have income. And then the next one is a dad saying, wear your mask. I've got kids. And then the next one is, hashtag pandemic, because now the hashtags are coming out and everything. Everybody's got a hashtag for everything. And then there's a guy saying, "Where's my check? I don't know what to do. You tell me to wear a mask. I'm doing everything I'm told. Give me my check." And then there's save my business. At the time I was sitting here, our camp, I live and work at a campground in the Smoky Mountains. That's how I'm able to sustain this life. And I work at a business that was closed for 2 months, and we didn't know. We kept being told, oh, maybe 2 weeks, 2 more weeks, 2 more weeks. And we were closed for 2 months and didn't even know if we were going to have a camping season. And all day I was on the phone in the store, a few hours a day. My whole shift was just telling people, no, I don't know when we're going to open. Do you want to postpone your reservation? Do you want your money back? What are we going to do? And so that the Save My Business is kind of my experience personally on the mountain. And then hashtag essential. Here we go again. Everything, if you're essential, you're this, you're that. And so that just kind of, that she's dressed like a nurse, just to remind us of that aspect of it. And then the sky is falling. Of course, you had the people where, everyone's going to die tomorrow if we even, don't blink right. And so he's kind of representing that one. And then homeless. Homeless is really important to me because homeless stands for all those other things that were already there, that weren't being
Mm,
served, that
right.
now were really being ignored because of the circus. And
Wow.
then pray for vaccine was just a whole nother aspect, that's a whole nother train going out of that station and down that path. And then time to awaken. I also wanted to include all my spiritual friends who had a whole nother perspective on the entire situation. So it was simply trying to show 12 different examples of all the different perspectives and things going on in our world at the
Wow.
time were all still happening simultaneously, whether we were paying attention or not. All
Yeah.
of these things were still happening, were valid things that people were feeling and experiencing during this time. So it was kind of like, and I purposely kind of altered them. I didn't put all the masked people over here or anything about sickness over here. I made sure I went through a lot of trouble to make them interspersed, you know,
Mm,
because we are all of our experiences are interwoven into the fabric,
yes.
of our
And yeah,
lives, and
as
we are
you're
all.
yeah, as you were describing it, which brought even more clarity. I had my own interpretation of it as you
Mhm,
describe, the essence of the why behind it. I started to sense noise,
mhm,
right? It's just so everyone's saying something and it's like,
uh-huh,
and then what comes out of that is we don't see things as they are. We see things as we are, right?
mhm,
And so each one of those represents that. And is there unity in any of that, right? Where's the love? And so those are things that come up for me. And also, just because my daughter is an artist, she's a sketcher, a painter. She does beautiful work. She started to increase or shift in what she was creating, and I noticed it's like, what does that mean? I was like, I love the painting, but there was some meaning in it that I didn't understand. And what she told me was, I'd rather not share. What does it mean for you? I'm like, no, no, no. You can save that battle for somebody else. Well, no, tell me I'm your dad. She goes, well, I don't feel like I want to really share that right now. And I was like, wow, you know, it's really interesting to see what we feel, what we see, what we hear in a piece of work. So as you explain it, it brings so much clarity where I think maybe that's what you were maybe experiencing when you started to unveil this. Am I right?
Yeah, this has been a huge, this whole experience has been a huge lesson for me as an artist. As I
Hmm.
begin to put my work out in the world, I'm learning that once you put an image out in the world, you don't have any control over how people receive it. And they're going to
Yes.
make of it what they want. And
Mm.
they're going to have reactions and triggers and responses in themselves when they see it. And that is what they're going to decide your art means. And
Right.
that was a huge lesson because I don't have any control over that. I know what I meant. I know in the moment. I know every time I go back and look at it, it means something different to me. So I get it.
Right. It's
um,
a, yeah. And it also does what you just shared, Jody, rings true for art as well as everyone that is watching and listening, what their gift to the world is,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
Whether it be speaking,
right,
whether it be, doing a healing modality or
right,
something that is, it's not their responsibility to, understand or you're not responsible for other people's reactions,
right,
etc.
right,
However, when they come up and it's like misunderstood, right? That's
right.
where it can get kind of, wait, that's not my intention here,
Yeah,
right?
some people
So
have really been triggered by this project and
yes,
they've let me know.
what is it about it that do you feel has triggered them? What are you feeling
It's the
some of those
later
key things?
ones. It's the later
Okay, so
ones. It's
let's
not
go to
not the first two.
let's go to
We'll
part
keep
two
going.
then. Okay, I'll bring up part two.
So this one, this one,
Yeah.
this one was actually the third one I designed. The third
Hmm.
piece I did was the second one I designed. And then this one came up and I knew this one was number 2 that led to number 3.
Okay.
This is an example of how we all, especially on social media, like we will choose to react from our triggers. This is a gentleman standing looking at a wall of swords and vests. And he's saying, how shall I
Mm.
live with fear today? And he's choosing, he has all these choices. I can be a victim, I can be a know it all, blind faith, bully, humor, anger, awake, take the red pill, take the blue pill, whatever they're saying.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
then the swords that cut are keyboard warrior, fear monger, smug superiority, cognitive dissonance, and Stockholm
Oof.
syndrome. And it's just all the things I was watching on social media and all the things I was experiencing, some in myself, some on the receiving end from other people. And I just needed to let it out. I just needed to this is, oh my gosh, this is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm feeling. And that's when I knew this was going to be a series.
Yeah.
That's when I
Wow.
knew, oh, this is the second one. Because first we're standing there with, and then again, as the series progressed, it enhanced the meaning of each of the previous pieces. Because now that I have this one, I see that's when I realized, oh, in the first one, they're not looking at each other. They're
Mm.
standing there with their fists up and their little signs, and then they're going to part two, and they are
Yeah.
reacting out of fear because we were all so scared. Nobody knew what to make of this. Nobody knew. And then we've got the circus going on telling us to live in deep fear or we're an evil human being if we're not living in deep seated fear. And I just don't happen to buy into that philosophy for my life. And so it was very
Yeah.
frustrating to me to see all these different people being manipulated to and living from their most base instinct in reaction to
Hmm.
fear instead of taking a step back and taking a breath. And
Yes. Well, that question, how shall I live with fear today, is such at the, subconscious level that
mhm,
it's just, it's crazy. there's a lot of comments are coming in, so I wanted to share one of them with you. So Simon Kelly over across the pond there says, the back of your artwork will also have an equally powerful message too. The threads will show a similar messy picture. Ooh, all messed up as the
Mm.
front. Such a wonderful accomplishment on both sides. Yeah, great
Oh,
comment,
thank
Simon.
you.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you.
very, very cool. And so, wow. What
So
are
since he
some?
said that, I'll hold up the back of that piece.
Oh, okay. Yeah, great. Yeah, isn't
I
that
just figured
something?
since he said that, I'll just hold up the back.
Even in
Um,
terms of, cross stitching, I remember when you were sharing how many hours you were spending, like a day, just to get your first
yeah,
piece done,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And in the finished product, we don't know what goes into it, right? How many hours
yeah,
did it take for your first piece? Because there's a lot of intricate detail in that.
yeah. The first
Right.
piece, I kept track, and because I wanted to know how long will this take if I'm going to put this out in the world, I thought it'd be interesting, and it took
Right.
80 hours of
Wow.
actual stitching on this one.
Yeah.
80
Wow.
hours. And I didn't keep track hour by hour on the other three because it got tedious. And I thought, I just want to do this. I just want to enjoy this. I don't want to keep track of the
Yeah.
hours.
Good.
So after the first one, I thought, well, then I'll have an average. If my design program tells me how many stitches are in each one, and I know how many stitches this was. This was like over 13,000 stitches or something. And I had 80
Wow.
hours. I can figure out, it comes to about 169 stitches an hour on average. And so then I can do the math and figure out, and then there's times where you make mistakes or you get a knot, you have to undo it and go
Yeah.
back. And so then you allow for that.
Right.
But it took almost 200 hours to do all of them.
That's
But this first
wow.
piece alone was
Crazy.
80 hours. And I designed it April 29th. I started it on April 30th and I finished it on May 31st with the first piece.
Wow. Wow. And then
That's
it began to, yeah.
Yeah, and it was so fun and so meaningful to me. And then by the time I was done stitching the first one, I already had the other three designed and knew where this was going and what it was going to say. So then I'm excited and I'm like, stitching
Yeah.
faster, get this out in the world.
Well, I want to go to the ones that really sparked conversation. All right.
Yeah,
So let's
yeah.
bring up part 3 of the Mirror
Okay.
Project. Okay.
Now, this one I was really afraid to put out in the world. This was the first one I got real nervous because I knew once I put this one out in the world, some people were going to feel strong things and want to make that about me. And so it was about the time that I designed this. This was the second one I designed, but the third one in the series because I realized it was a story.
Hmm.
This is when I really realized that the project is called the Mirror Project. See yourself. Because when I realized people were going to have strong reactions to this one, whether they understood the whole project or not, I knew they would see this one image and have strong reactions. I thought, that's what I want them to see.
Hmm.
That's what the point of this project is. I want them to see this story unfold and see how it makes them react and take a look at that. And that is why it's called the Mirror Project. See yourself. Because I saw myself in every different person on that first fabric. I was at some point, even if for a fleeting moment, as much as I say, oh, I didn't want to get caught up in that circus. I'm still human. I still have emotions. I still have reactions. And at some point in March, I
Hmm.
was every single one on that fabric.
Wow.
Even though I am the most anti put poison in your body person, I had a fleeting moment, one fleeting moment where I thought, where it was so scary in the beginning when we didn't know what was happening. I thought, oh my God, would I take a vaccine to hug my grandchild?
Yeah.
And later I sat with that at length and thought, I wouldn't, I just can't.
Huh.
But I had a fleeting moment in the very beginning when things were scary and I was out of state and I wasn't back to my home and things were locking down and I didn't think I'd be able to get back to my home. And when it was that scary in the beginning, I did have a fleeting moment where I would even be the pray for the vaccine woman for a second. And so I
Yeah.
can honestly say that everything about this project, I can see myself in it. I have allowed this project to make me see myself, even the parts I
Mm,
didn't want to see, even the
yeah.
ways that were uncomfortable to see myself, I have. And
Yeah.
so I'm very comfortable now putting it out in the world, saying, here, see yourself, because I
Yeah.
have.
Yeah. There's yeah, that's beautiful. I I put a quote out, I don't know, 2 months ago, and people are tired of me saying it, but it's so like perfect for a time as this. And you've heard me say it, like the other is not the enemy. It's the
Yeah,
inner me that is calling my attention.
yeah.
Because as you call it, the mirror project, right? See yourself.
Hmm.
It does. It's those moments and that are really, I believe that all this is happening for that. And the person at the very end who's saying, it's time to awaken or whatever that,
Yeah,
that was.
yeah,
So I can see that for a moment. I appreciate you being totally real here as it relates to that one moment. It's like, you know,
yeah,
I want to see my grandchild, will I take this
yeah,
vaccine?
yeah,
And I'm sure there's so many different thoughts. And also just building our empathy muscles with the people on part one, right? They're only communicating what's happening inside of them. So rather combating them and say, let's go to it. Don't wear a mask, you wear a mask, and all those types of
right,
things. We can
right.
share what is true for us, but at the same time, be with others, right? To understand where they're at. And you told me recently, people don't, they meet you where you are, where they are, not where you are,
Right. People can
right?
only receive you from where they are at.
Right.
They don't receive you. So I'm over here and I'm doing this, I've done that, and I'm putting things out in the world. People don't receive me or my message or anything I say or feel or think or do from where I am.
Yeah.
They can only receive me from where they are.
Hmm.
And once I had that awareness, it brought a lot of peace and frustration, of course, but peace because, like, you can't get mad at someone for
Hmm.
not being in your skin.
Yes.
They're in their skin, they're walking their path.
Right.
But because most people don't have that awareness, they don't understand that I do. And that because of that, I don't judge. And they will decide I'm judging, or they will decide if JoDi says she doesn't believe in masks, that she's telling me not to wear one. No, I'm not. I'm never telling someone else what to do.
Yeah.
And in my mind, it is possible for me to be over here living my path and you to be
Mm.
right next to me living yours. And that's possible in the reality that I live in. You can be next to me and have your ideas, decisions, ways of living, ways of thinking, ways of being, and I can have mine, and we can coexist side by side.
Oh, long distance high five. Come on
But
now. Okay, appreciate
most
it. Yeah.
people can't even comprehend that because they don't even know what they believe, let alone thinking, understand that we can both be side by side,
Yeah.
you
I,
know.
I came across a gentleman named Thomas Merton, and he said, the beginning of love is to let those we love be perfectly themselves and not to twist them to fit in our own image. Otherwise, we love only the reflection of ourselves we find in them,
Right.
right? And
That's
so what
beautiful.
love is, yeah, radical acceptance, not trying, but still the freedom to be who I am. And the person next to me, they could be polar
Right.
opposites, but when you pull all the layers back, we're all the same. And
Yeah.
so as we meet people where we are, you know, that's where the gratefulness in my mind comes in. Gratitude is just like, wow, all this work I've been
Yeah.
doing for all of these years allows me to stand right here next to my brother and sister who has a different worldview than I do,
Hmm.
right? But if I pull back the layers of that worldview, I find there's a soul in there that is just like mine,
Hmm.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
very, very cool. All right,
I think
let's
that's missing from a lot of conversation.
Totally. Yes. Okay. I want to get to part four. All right.
Okay,
So let's
so
go.
the whole point of this story and where it was going was that if we're in part one and if we are reactionary and in part two tearing each other up, then we're giving away our power. And part three was an example of how we give away our power. That's all it was. That's all it was meant to be. Here is one way you can be giving away your power if you're not careful, right?
Right.
And if we do that, it can lead the whole world to part four. If we continue to give away our power, if we continue to lead with fear and just disparity and tearing each other down, we're going to give away our power as is. And the strongest way I could find to express that was three, and it's going to lead us to part four. And this is the world that we're going to have left. We're all going to, it's not going to matter what was on our sign because they're going to be burning on the ground, and we're all going to
Mm,
be controlled, whether it be by our own anger, whether it be, some people have taken this one to me so many different things, but that whole, you're a conspiracy theorist, you think they're trying to, well, you know what, whatever, I don't care what you think. But that wasn't the point of this one. The point of this one was, it doesn't matter who wrote that sign on the wall, we're all going to be following it if we don't stop and hear each other,
mm,
if we don't stop and go back to part one and turn your head to the left or the right. For heaven's
right.
sake, like, I'm getting choked up thinking about it. If we don't go back to part one, if we don't stop it before it gets to part two where we put on those vests and pick up those swords, if we don't just, and I tried to do that on social media. I tried to allow conversation on my own wall. I would post something that I knew would bring out people on all different sides and let them have a conversation. And I realized that you can't do that in that form. It's not the right place for it. And I think I kind of knew that, but I wanted to believe that it could be better than it is. And but so I just had to take a step back myself just completely, because instead of, I was attempting to go there and be the change, and instead of being the change, it was sucking me into what it was, and I can't have that. And so I completely, and I had already planned halfway through this project. I thought, you're going to release these and then you're going to get off social for a while, and I was like, yeah, that's going to
Hmm.
happen. And then it was like I was prompted to leave twice, and was like, no, you haven't even finished releasing the art. You really need to release the art first. So, let
Right.
the world see what you've been working on, 30,000 stitches. Let's at least put it out in the world before we just go say goodbye. And then last week I just saw so much just ick, and I just said, I just can't. This is so out of alignment with who I am. And I didn't get here. I'm in a bigger RV now because of being true to myself and following my own path and
Yeah.
living my personal philosophy and my personal beliefs. And I can't sit here and maintain this way of life if I'm also going to continue to go into a cesspool of toxic energy that takes me away completely from everything that I am. And so I just very abruptly the other day, just, I'm out, and it was actually ironic because it was a deadline I had set. I had said 2 weeks earlier. I thought, yeah, the first week of August. And then I was like, probably by Thursday. Like, before I do that show with Joe, I'm gonna get out. I'm gonna get out of social, and I'm gonna have this lovely conversation where I can be heard for a length of time to express myself, what I really mean, and then I'll just go do my thing.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how it unfolded. And that's how everything in my life has been.
Yeah.
More so than ever in 2020. I make a decision and then it just
Yeah.
happens.
That's just a great lesson for all of us. Just honor yourself, honor what's
Hmm.
happening inside. You know, it's not about popularity and or the idea
Right.
that everyone's
Right.
right. It's honoring, and that's the pathway to true happiness.
And having clear boundaries and having clear set standards of, I
Hmm.
will give and give and give. However, I have, I don't want to say, I guess, rules for myself. Yeah,
Hmm.
boundaries are like your personal rules. I will let you talk to me about anything, but the minute you become a bully, the minute you
Yeah.
are abusive or
Hmm.
abusive to anyone else in the conversation, I'm done. I'm done.
because it's not a conversation at that point,
Exactly.
right? Yeah. I think
And
people,
and
yeah,
people that
what they,
watch me, sorry, the
no,
delay,
no,
I'm
no, it's
sorry.
good. That's good.
People that watch me closely can see very clearly where my boundaries are. People
Right.
that pick and choose sometimes don't understand. Oh, I didn't do anything different than I've always done
Mm-hmm.
consistently for years. You are always open to express yourself. Any space that I create or that I am in, I invite everyone to be the fullest expression of who they are. And I don't care if you agree with me or not. And I will only shut it down and completely shut it down if you are abusive to me or anyone else in the conversation.
Yeah.
And
That's
and
awesome.
and that's and I had to come to that after I'm 50 years old. You know, it took me 50 years to understand that I am allowed to hold that boundary.
Totally.
You know what I mean? Because we're
Oh,
not
yeah.
raised that way. We're not
That's
raised that
right.
way.
Yeah.
And I had to learn that over 50 years of taking people's abuse, that I'm
Right.
allowed to say, no, I think this is where my line in the sand is.
Right.
We all need to draw lines in the sand. We need a line in the sand of how we'll be treated. We need a line in the sand for what we want our world to look like.
Mm-hmm.
That was another, where's your line in the sand? So
Mm.
we don't get here. Where's your line in the sand? How far will you let this circus go? That's the one of the biggest messages as far as my heart wanting to put this out in the world. I want
Yeah.
people to sit and just think, just sit in silence for a little while and just think, well, this is all happening. This is true, and this is true, and this is true, and this is true. However, what am I going to decide for myself and
Yeah.
my life that I will go this far and no more? Where's the line in the sand? And I even
Yeah.
asked that on one of my posts. I said, how far is too far? What is your line in the sand? And not a single person answered that. They all got hung up on everything else about that post, and no one answered my question.
Wow.
And that was a big, when I was like, okay, yeah, this is not the right forum for this conversation.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I want to share a few of the comments that are coming in, Jody.
Okay. Yeah, I
Steve
can't see those.
Weber. Yeah, Steve is actually another host on Spirituality Gone Wild. Thank you for joining, Steve.
Okay.
Says, this has been a very confusing time. So much conflicting stories. Thanks for holding up the mirror. See, Jody? Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Thank you for
Mr.
seeing me.
Yeah. Um, this is conversations we are missing from a lot of conversations. Yes.
Hmm.
Gwen. I know her from somewhere. I'm not quite sure. And then
That was funny.
Taz, the leader of our country is leading with fear, which triggers a fear in so many. And I remember we had a conversation about just that, the energy, right? That
Hmm.
of that all, and
Hmm.
that's a whole nother conversation.
Can I
But
make
please,
one
please
can
do.
I speak to something you and I were talking a little bit about before the show?
Yeah.
Personal responsibility.
Mm,
I I feel in for my walk in this skin, I happen to believe that we are consciousness that chose to come here and have a human experience and take that for whatever. I feel that there are two ways that ultimately every train of thought, every train of beliefs, politics, religion, philosophy can be narrowed down to two things. Either you are of this track or that track. You take absolute personal responsibility for everything that happens in your existence and your awareness, or you do not take personal responsibility for everything that happens in your awareness and in your path. And if you look at the world, it's easy to see how someone could come to this conclusion, okay? That's what I
hmm
mean. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not saying I'm wrong. I'm saying this works for me, walking in my
Right.
skin on this earth. Okay, so let's get that clear right from the beginning, because I don't believe anyone else is right or wrong. I just think we're all doing the best we can every day, trying to figure out. I mean, I've changed my philosophy 50 times in 50 years, right? This is the one that's working for me in 2020. Okay.
Yeah.
But I believe if you immediately say, the president's doing this, or they're doing that, or that person's doing that, and that's why this is happening, and that person, where's the personal responsibility? I have family who will sit and watch one channel 24/7 and parrot everything they say and never actually live their life, never actually take personal responsibility, and nothing is their fault, but they're miserable all day long and don't have anything they want in their life and haven't in decades. So I see that in my life, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
that leads me to say, oh, maybe I should try this. Maybe I should try the opposite, right? So I've literally spent like most of my life being the opposite of what I see people doing that, in my mind, it doesn't look like it's serving them, but obviously it is, or they wouldn't be doing it. So that was a lesson
Right.
too, right? But I see people so quick, and I'm not going to say like my politics are nobody's business. Whether I agree with the president or don't, it's irrelevant. I just am tired of seeing people jump on a train of it's this person's fault, it's that person's fault, and everybody does it on all sides. So I'm not singling out Taz because she happened to make that comment. She just reminded me that that's one of my biggest frustrations in the world right now, is everyone is so quick to take the responsibility. Okay, so I don't take that much weight. Politics doesn't matter to me very much because
Right.
I don't let some guy in a house in another state on another part of the planet have that much control over me and my existence.
Hmm.
And so I don't understand people that do, because I'm over here in the Smoky Mountains living a really great life. And it has nothing to do with
Right.
a guy in Washington, a guy in California, a guy in Europe. Like none of that has anything to do with me.
Yeah.
I'm creating a beautiful reality right here by taking absolute, complete control over every single thing that happens in my day, in my life, in my awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And because I've gotten so single focused on living that track,
Right.
yes, there is a virus in the world today. And guess what?
Mm.
I'm fine. I'm
Yeah.
fine. I'm fine. I'm okay. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm still fine. As I mentioned, I was fine because I'm not letting that control me. I'm not
Yeah.
saying it is not a valid thing happening in the world today. I'm
Right.
saying I don't let it control me. I don't let it control my decisions. I don't let it control my awareness. I decide what affects my life in this moment. And because I've lived this way, while I was in the middle of stitching this and our campground finally opened and I'm working all these hours, while I'm in the middle of all that, I upgraded my RV.
Yeah.
My first RV was a 24-foot travel trailer, and it was the Joy Love bus. It was very exciting. It was a whole thing. And while I was working on this, my roof leaked. And I'm sitting there stitching on this, and I have water coming in, and I've got tarps over my trailer. What am I going to do? And I decided I was going to manifest something better. I decided that it didn't matter if we were in the middle of this thing in the world and that thing in the world. And I decided something better's coming. And it did.
Yeah.
It unfolded really kind of magically. And now I live in the middle of working on this project. I moved from a 24-foot travel trailer to a 37-foot with 3 slide outs. And I feel like I'm living in a little house. And I have a separate bedroom now and a
Mm.
pantry and 2 refrigerators. And it's really kind of exciting. And every time I
Mm.
look around in my home, I think, wow, you did this because you stayed true to yourself and you trusted yourself and you didn't let anything outside of you control
Mm.
your experience. You did
Wow.
not give your responsibility or your power away to anyone. And you did this.
Yeah. Absolutely. Personal responsibility.
Mhm.
Right. And I,
To the extreme.
yes, to the extreme. And
Mhm.
a lot of people say, well, personal responsibility is the ability to respond, but really it is responding to your ability
Mhm.
with your ability, right? So that's awesome. Right.
I
Beautiful
think
share.
people don't realize how much love is in personal responsibility. And one of
Mm.
the things that got me here is the Hawaiian practice of let me say it right, Ho'oponopono.
Hmm. Mm. Okay, Jody, I don't know if you can hear me, but your audio went out and it went out again. You can hear me though, right? Wave hi. Okay, so as you can hear, we can't hear you. Let's see if I have a control on my end. Maybe your AirPods went out potentially. Go ahead and take them off and yes. And so while she's changing that for those who are viewing, I'd encourage you to visit Jody and her website at joyloveart.com and include some of her artwork, her art pieces, and many of her thoughts in her blog posts. So I encourage you all to check Jody out there. Now she's coming back in. Okay, I can't hear you. Yeah. Okay, well, we're having some technical difficulties. No, can't hear you. I'm a good lip reader. No, it's okay. We are, yeah. Well, we're coming up to time, and I'm sorry. Don't leave us. I wanted to thank you for coming on. This is a conversation I'd love to actually to continue. I think your arts just spoke for itself, right, and really has helped us to see ourselves in the midst of what's happening in the world today, to continue to have the courage to look ourselves right in this mirror through other people and situations, and also even a physical mirror, right, and looking deep within ourselves. So thank you for coming on. There's a couple of questions I always ask, and I have to get this because I'm accumulating all of the responses, but they were, if you had a billboard and you could put any message on it, knowing there are thousands of people who would see, what would that message be? So I'll let you share that with me and I'll share it with everyone else. But I'm thinking personal responsibility would be bomb. And then, right. And then if you could only be remembered by your words only, what would those words be? And that's not really fair for me to ask you that when we can't hear you. But I'd love you to think about that and share that. And I'll share it on the wall, right? So thank you, Jody, for coming on and gracing us with your art, with your insight, with your absolute unconditional love. It's a joy to know you. And I know that everyone who has been watching today has really gleaned from this piece of work that is really being a reflective look at ourselves. So thank you for that. It's a great gift. For those of you who are watching, thank you for watching Love Wave Live. I'll be on again next Saturday with a woman who is steeped in spiritual law. And she talks about the idea how intuition is so critical. And it's kind of what you've shared today, Jody. And so I have a guest next week who's going to come on. You will absolutely love her. So join us next Saturday as well, 8 a.m. Pacific, 10 Central, 11 Eastern. And if there's any topics or guests that y'all would like to see or hear, just drop me a note within any of my Facebook pages, whether it be my personal page, Joe Italic, or Love Wave Live. Let's go there. I'm going to be taking down An Unconditional Life, actually. And then follow me also on social media, on Instagram at Joe Italic and Love Wave Live, and also on Facebook. So thank you all for joining. Have a beautiful weekend. Jody, love you so much. Everybody have a phenomenal weekend. And everybody take care.